Why did you make circles?
Well, actually, we lived in Australia from 1958 to 66, which was 8.5 years. And me always being interested in outer space and UFOs and things, I saw an article in the Australian newspaper one day about some circles in some reed beds or grass in Tully in Queensland. And after reading it, of course, I forgot all about it. But when I returned home in 66, I met David Chorley, and he was also an artist, so we had a common interest there. And for the next few years, we used to go out on our Friday evenings to have a drink in the pub and talk about paintings. And one day when we were walking on Cheesefoot Head near Winchester, one summer evening, in the midst of the cornfields, we sat down there and trying to get a bit of inspiration probably for some paintings. And I suddenly remembered this article that I read while in Australia. And I told him about it, and I said it'd be quite a good bit of fun if we could devise some way of making a circular mark in the cornfields here and sort of arouse a bit of interest. People would think that a UFO had landed during the night when they discovered it the next morning. So after returning home to my workshop, I sort of thought quite a bit the next day as to what we could use to make this circle. So we started off by using my big heavy security bar that was on my workshop door. And our first few circles were made on our hands and knees with this security bar. We were kneeling down side by side, but my goodness, it was certainly hard work. But it was quite good fun because you were down below the height of the corn, and if a car was coming down the road and the headlights were surging towards you, we used to just to say, down we go, and just wait for it to pass. And but for the first 2 years, our circles were not seen at all, except I suppose by the driver of the combine harvester, because we were doing them in fields that the public couldn't see them from the road. The ideal place, of course, would have been the punch bowl at Cheesefoot Head, but at that time there were sheep in there, and I don't think it had ever been ploughed for crops until about the third year. My wife and I drove up past there one Sunday afternoon, and they were ploughing the punch bowl, and I thought to myself, I must go back to Southampton to find Dave Chorley and tell him that the ideal spot for doing a circle was now under crops. So we patiently waited until the spring to see the first corn arrive, and we knew that this would be the ideal spot to do our circles. And our first circle in the punch bowl, it was on the news the next evening, which pleased us quite a lot. And of course the other place which was ideal for the public to view them was the White Horse at Westbury and Clay Hill, which we did quite a few there as well. It was all a bit of fun, really, yes. And being circular, and UFOs were circular, we just wanted people to imagine, just to believe the next morning that, my God, something's landed here during the night, and the fact that it was circular, they immediately would think that it was a UFO, because flying saucers were circular, you see. It was no good doing square or triangle or anything like that, because they wouldn't cotton on to anything from outer space. And as I say, once the news broke, it gave us quite a fillip, you see, and to carry on. Because Dave Chorley said to me one day, he says, I've had enough of this. He said, I'm not going to keep on doing this. He said, every week, he says, we're getting nowhere with this, we're getting no publicity. I said, you just hang on a minute. I said, especially when the punch bowl's ploughed, now that we can get down in there. And of course, lo and behold, it was on the television news the next night, and the news was rapidly spreading around that something was making these circular marks in the cornfields. And of course, you know the story from then on. It just grew and grew. And of course, the more publicity we got with the media and newspapers and things, it egged us on even more. So the circles continued as circles for quite a while, but Dr. Terence Meaden, who is a very clever man as far as weather is concerned, he really got us, because he was saying it was wind vortices, you see, and that we didn't like that. So we had to change from circles into something else. No. If you want a cup of tea and a bit of cake, you say so, you break off. Well, we were so secretive about all this, and we realised when we started this that no one must know what we were doing, and otherwise it was going to spoil everything completely. And then we said to each other, well, what about our wives? And I said, well, the fact that we go out every Friday evening, they won't be any the wiser, because that was our usual thing, is to go out Friday evenings for a pint of beer. And but it was 7 years before my wife really found out about this, and she came to me one day and she said, this car needs servicing quite a lot. She says, with the enormous amount of miles that you're doing, she said, I'd like to know where you're going in these evenings. And I said, we are journeying around the countryside quite a bit. And she wasn't very satisfied with this, so I had no alternative but to hand her the huge album of all the press cuttings, the publicity lovers that we were, and show her. And she said, well, this doesn't mean a thing to me, really. She says, I know all about the circle, she says, but you're telling me that you and David are doing them. She says, there's only one way to prove it. She says, that's to take me out one night and tell me what you're going to do, which we did, and then it was proved. But of course it was nice then, because once she knew, although we were only going out Fridays and perhaps another night, once she knew about this, we could go out Mondays, Tuesdays, Thursdays, Fridays and Saturdays, and we were doing more. That's when the circle started to increase, because up until then we couldn't do many circles because we were only allowed out, so to speak, on Friday nights. And someone even made a remark, I don't know whether it was Pat Delgado or not, but he said it's very, very strange that these circles only seem to appear Saturday mornings. And of course that was quite true, you see, because it was Friday nights that we started doing the circles. But once our wives knew about it, then the circles increased, because we were out more nights then than the Friday night. You must remember that our circles were quite small compared to what's happening today. And although we were treading down a lot of farmers' corn, we knew what we were doing as far as a bit of vandalism was concerned. But the bit of fun that we got out of it, out of the small circles that we were creating, we didn't seem to mind that very much. And as I say, I would never dream of doing 700, 800 or 1,000 foot long patterns and things in fields, really, because I mean, after all, it is a form of it is vandalism, isn't it? As the years rolled by, it was getting more and more difficult. And for instance, in the early days, you could back your car into the farmer's field in his gateway, pop out, do the circle, get back in the car again and have a cup of coffee, and still stay where you were all the time. But nowadays, the last few years, it would be impossible for you to leave a car, an empty car. If a police car came by now and saw an empty car at 1 o'clock in the morning, they would certainly stop and go back. But in those early days, no one seemed to take any notice at all. The money side of it doesn't really come into it, or it never has come into it really, because it was the laughs and the fun that we had at night. We were aware of it after a while, jewellery being made and tapestry, wall hangings and all the rest of it. But as far as we were concerned, we were just having a laugh from it. But there was no way really that we could make money out of it.
No, but we were angry that people were using it as a means of making money out of more gullible people. They were forming associations, they were doing, as you said, making jewellery, posters, T-shirts, all this sort of thing. They were using your creations and people's gullibility to make money for themselves.
Well, they still are, even
yes,
today.
I know.
I had a good laugh at some of the things that they said. I mean, for instance, if you see people laying on their backs in a circle, joining hands and doing a dance around, to me that was incredibly funny when I first heard of it. But after a while, I got to a different way of thinking. And I thought to myself, well, if this is what they want to make of it, it's entirely up to them. I can't understand why it's got so big, but I can see now that it's more or less uncontrollable, because these people are going to do exactly what they want, and if they get pleasure from it, okay.
By phone calls or letters?
Well, we were very surprised that we did receive 2 letters from a group called the Black Watch, and said that we had to stop making circles in cornfields, and it did worry us quite a bit, because the way you've got to look at this is that if anything happened to us in any form, then the suspicions would then go to the people that sent these letters. Of course, I'm a wildlife sound recordist and have been for about 15 to 20 years now, and I'm out most nights recording the sounds of deer and mammals and birds, all this sort of thing. And when I went to the meeting at the Guildhall in Winchester one evening, which was the subject of crop circles, they brought up this business about the grasshopper warbler, the sound that they'd heard up on Cheesefoot Head near Winchester, and I knew immediately what this was, because I'd already recorded this bird several years before, and this bird also sings at night. And when it came to question time after the meeting, I walked up to the stage, and I spoke to Busty Taylor, who happened to be there, and the other people as well, and I said, the noise that you heard that night was a grasshopper warbler, because I'm a sound recordist and I knew what it was. And they did everything but almost threw me out of the Guildhall. But of course, there again, you see, I think the more you can add to this phenomenon, the more interest you're going to get worldwide from audiences. You can say that you've got damage to your lenses of your cameras, and you've got I mean, if you get away from the circle business a minute, but people that have their films developed every week of the year, they have marks and things on their film, which is more or less can't be explained. But the fact that these people get some marks on them when they're photographing crop circles, they try to marry the two together. So quite honestly, I think it's all imagination, and it's just to make things sound a little bit more important than they are. There was one strange happening one night when we were doing a pictogram on top of Telegraph Hill, and Dave was over one side of the pattern doing his little bit, and I was doing mine, and suddenly I was knocked unconscious, and only for a short time, of course. Something hit me on the head, and I immediately thought that the farmer or the farm workers were approaching us and they'd thrown a stone at me or something. But anyway, the next thing I knew, David was kneeling over me, and he's saying, what's the matter, you know, what's the trouble? And I said, I don't really know. I said, something's hit me on the head. He said, well, there's nobody about. But then I started feeling what I thought was blood running all down the back of my neck, and all my hair was full of blood. But of course we didn't know that it was blood because we had no torch. We couldn't use torches, of course, otherwise we'd be seen. And Dave says, I think we better get back to the car. I said, no, we must finish the pattern. We can't leave it half finished. But so anyway, I came to quite well after a bit, and we had about a 3/4 of a mile journey back to the car. And I said, well, we can't see what it is. I said, until we get back to the car park and switch the headlights on. And anyway, when we got back to the car and switched the lights on, my God, he says, what a mess your head's in. I was covered in green, like green slime, and plenty of other things intermixed with it. And I said, well, we'll get off home now. But of course, when I reached home, I opened the door and I had to call to my wife, and I said, don't be alarmed when you see me. I said, but I've got some nasty stuff, I said, all over my head. And anyway, she had a look at it, and my God, it was really terrible. But what had happened, it was a chunk of ice had fallen from an aircraft that was going over, and how on earth, the millions of chances to one of it hitting me on the head, I don't know. But as it was a warm evening, by the time it hit me, it was just a soft piece of sludge, but it was just enough to knock me out for a minute or two. And of course, the air people from Heathrow completely deny anything falling from aircraft. But as you know, that there's plenty of reports since of lumps of ice falling through people's roofs and into their living rooms. But thank God it was only just a small soft piece that hit me that night.
And it was, of course, the chemical toilet waste.
Yes, it was. Yes, yes. Well, although I'm an artist myself, it's a totally different art to what we created in the fields. As I say, the fact that it was circular to start with, and UFOs were circular, that was the whole idea behind it, and it's what's come of it as the years have gone by. But the recognition that we've had, I suppose we've left our mark, and sadly my friend Dave Chorley has passed away now. He's creating circles up in the sky.
Yeah, we used to talk to each other when we're doing this, but all it is flattened corn. If you walk in, you've flattened it. The only difference was the shapes. Just, you know.
We love the shapes because of its artistic value, but I mean, what these people have made of it
Was their business.
I mean, it's just become a big laugh as the years go by.
But I'm still here. I'm not creating circles anymore. I'm retired now, haha. And you can believe that or not. But as an artist, I create watercolours and oil paintings, and also in the fields. It's the largest canvas that we've ever had, and as I say, it pleases me to think that it's given pleasure to a lot of people. Well, I was hoping to be knighted one day by the Queen, but I can't really see that happening, because I suppose the National Farmers Union will create a bit of a fuss then. But never mind, Sir Doug, he'll carry on as long as he can, and taking an interest in what other people are doing. Well, time and time again I've told people how these lots of people say, how on earth could these two men create circles all around the world? Well, the answer to that is very simple, because I've said it no end of times, but no one seems to take any notice of what I say. Not that they want to anyway. But let's take, for instance, if we did a circle up on Cheesefoot Head near Winchester of an evening, we would go up the next evening to have a look at our handiwork, and there would be anything up to 50 to 100 people up there viewing it, which pleased us no end. And of course, we would then rub shoulders with them, and they would be from all different parts of the world on holiday. There would be people from Canada, America, Germany, France, and we used to get into conversation with these people, and they used to say to us, when we get home from holiday, we're going to do a circle or two. And there you are. They've gone back to America, they've gone back to Canada, Germany, likewise Japan, and they're treading around just the same as we did. And there you have the circles in all parts of the world, not from Doug and Dave, but from the people that came over here on holiday, viewing the circles that we made, and then they're having a go themselves. They're still doing it today, aren't they? Well, yes, when we used to go up to view what we'd done the night before, as I say, the only people that we knew were searching this was Pat Delgado, Colin Andrews, Busty Taylor, who was flying over, and Richard Andrews. And we used to get into conversation with these, and I mean, they must know even to this day that we were frequenting up there and talking to them all the time. And I always remember one Wednesday afternoon at Longstock, I took my wife up to Longstock to have a look at the circle that we'd made previous, and I met Colin Andrews up there, and he said there was some connection between a bit of a rubbish dump there and the circle that was out in the field. And he gave me his business card, and he said, if you hear of any circles round about, he said, perhaps you could let me know. I said, yes, I will, because I travel around quite a bit, because I'm a wildlife sound recordist. And of course, Dave and I used to do a circle one evening, and then ring him up the next morning and said, oh, Colin, there's a circle at such and such, and he used to say, well, thanks very much. Thanks for the information, which made it all the fun.
Talk about that.
Well, this is a little bit of a mystery attached to this, although we've had a lot of fun out of making the circles over the years. When we started reading reports that some of our designs and patterns that we were creating had a connection with the Hopi Indians in America, Mongolia, Aborigine tribes, cave paintings, etc. And what mystifies me most of all is, where is the connection of this? Why is it that I could sit down and in half an hour create a pattern on a piece of paper? It was just as if my hand was being forced round with the pen to do this pattern. I don't know where it came from, but then you read afterwards in newspapers and magazines that it seems that there's a connection between what I drew that evening and what we were going to create in the fields with the Hopi Indians and Aborigine people. And it seems to me that it could be a connection between languages. But that mystifies me very much, because it makes me feel as if that there is something unknown to us that we've no knowledge of at all. Well, looking back at it all now, after all these years, I've come to the conclusion that it'll never end. I'm rather pleased that thousands of people have found an interest and an enjoyment from it. I hope no one ever gets caught doing it. We had some narrow squeaks, but I appreciate the fact that lots of people are more or less depending on this now for their interest. I suppose really it's a kind of religion, but I've got nothing against these people and what they've made of it. The people that the bit that gets me most of all, I think, is the so-called experts. What they've built themselves up as, what they say it is. They seem to know it all. The media goes to these people, but the people that find some enjoyment and pleasure from it, they're the people that I think are getting something from it, and I hope it continues that way. But I don't think it'll never end. It'll never end. It'll go on forever.
I first saw crop circles when I was back living in Watford, and at the time, you know, maybe not, I wasn't necessarily happy with the way that my life was going. I mean, a lot of people do. People get to points and they want to put their life on a different tack, or they're not completely satisfied with everything. And crop circles seem to be like a cosmic bat sign, really, for me. You know, it seemed something special, and it seemed like something exciting to go and look at and find out about. And much more interesting than the average, like, mundane life that I'd been living up until that point, you know. So, oh God, on pretty much of a whim, I sort of sold everything I had, bought a tent and a rucksack, and just hitchhiked up to the area and like started camping out. And crop circles started turning up where I was sleeping, and special coincidences and synchronous dreams and. Just a really magical air, and I become more and more absorbed into the area and into the crop circle phenomenon, which sort of ended up flowering from a belief of it all made by aliens into realising that they're made by humans, but there's still something magic there, because I knew that magic things had happened to me while I was interacting with them, and it didn't change when I started making them either. It just seemed to get more and more strange, except you weren't able to talk to hardly anybody about it. So it's been quite amazing, the entire journey from me then to me now. It's been very special. When I first turned up in the area, I got dropped off below Silbury Hill, and so it was late at night, so I bunged my tent up down by the bottom of Silbury. Very naughty, but I was ignorant of these confines at the time, and camped out. Woke up in the morning, climbed up Silbury because I'd see this magnificent monument by the side of my tent, because I was unaware of it at the time that I arrived there. Climbed up the top of Silbury Hill and to see what the view was like, and there was the most glorious star-shaped pattern in the field by Silbury. and I've only just turned up there, and I've, wow, you know, maybe this has turned up overnight, you know, because there's people in there. Maybe it's turned up, this is for me, you know, this is very, so special. So I ran down there as fast as I could, bursting in there, got to meet all the people that were involved in crop circles, and people who were filming, and people who were just visiting there or in the area. And I ended up speaking to about 8, 9 people who were sitting there, and everybody was speaking different languages, and there's French and Belgium and German, and like there's a really cosmopolitan sort of atmosphere, and everybody was sitting down and talking about love and life, and the hypocrisies of life, and spiritual ideals, and all these wonderful things. And I remarked at one point to everybody, oh, isn't this fantastic that we're all here talking, like as a group, as a unified bunch of people, you know. And the next day when I see the aerial photograph, it was in the lay of the crop was 2 doves of peace kissing, and so that was very significant for me, because I'd made that statement during that crop circle, so that was like a very poignant time for me. I've seen balls of light in the field while making, and while just like staying in the area. Oh, crikey, we've had weird things happen with time, and like you say something, and something, a relevant crop circle will turn up, you know, or you'll have a dream about something, or like have something poignant in it, and that'll be relevant to a crop circle that turns up, or drawing something and a crop circle's turn up. That's happened a couple of times, and very, very strong, you know, very definite, you know, exactly what you've drawn, you know. I had one occasion when I was sitting down with my brother, and my brother couldn't think of what to draw, and while he had the blank piece of paper in front of him, a cog came off, jumped off, or seemed to jump off a cup hook and land on the paper, so we drew a cog, and then that turned up. I think the overwhelming feeling that crop circles ended up giving me was a sense of interconnectedness between all the different elements, so like in my life and in everybody else's life, everything around us. It gave the sense that actions or thoughts that we might have might bear some relevance to something that doesn't at first seem like it's connected, but connections were made from seemingly unassociated things, people over vast distances and over time, and with events that were happening around the world, and people in fields right next to each other without knowing each other were there, making circles in the same place, you know, and people making the same circle in different places at similar time frames, and it all gave the increasing idea that all gaps and divides were like illusionary, that everybody and everything was connected in some way or shape, you know. Yeah. Wow, I bumped into a very naughty person once called Matthew Williams, who led me astray away from all the believers and all that, from that hazy view of the world to this much more concise and much more took me into the phenomenon, you know, but a different view on the same scenario, a different angle on it, and it seemed to flower even more after that, you know, take on all new possibilities, and all sorts of new kinds of magic started manifesting, and it took on a whole new slant, but still just as if not more fantastical and amazing and coincidental and synchronous and telepathic, and took it off into a whole new realm. And yeah, it was Matthew Williams that sort of really encouraged me and allowed me to flower, as it were.
I was just going to have to get my £10 out of my pocket.
Yeah, you know what I mean? It's true, though. It is true, Matt. You know what I mean? There's no denying it, is there? You were the one who fucking really said, look, here, mate, it's not actually like that, is it? You know? I think the real motivation to go to so much effort is the idea of being able to do something for somebody you don't know, that you've never met, and you maybe even never likely to meet, something that hopefully will be positive in their life, will help them, maybe heal them, take them onto a new level, help them meditate, just give them a calm moment away from everything. Just to do something positive, completely selflessly, for someone else, is just the most wonderful gift in the world. And also another reason for doing it is because it hopefully opens people's eyes to new subjects, new ways of looking at things, new ways of viewing art, new ways of thinking, new ways of behaving, even with meditation and how we interact with nature. And it works on so many different levels, and there's so many positive messages that are interwoven into the matrix of crop circles that there's more reasons to do it than not to. Well, some people see it as joking around, as fooling people, if you like, but I don't see it like that. I see it like, well, in my personal experience, I went through the process, and it gave me a lot to go through the process. I benefited from it, and so to allow other people to go through that same mechanism or thought process, I think would be great. No, I don't see it as a joke, and I don't see it as being shamming people. It's a wonderful, beautiful, special, magical land, place and experience to interact with these things. It's not a joke. It's more than it's beyond a, you know, it's beyond a joke. It's bigger than a joke. You know, it's this is something quite divine, something quite special and subtle and magical. You know, it's not a joke. No, I don't see it as pulling the wool over people's eyes. I see it as hopefully opening people's eyes up to many, many other things that are usually missed in normal life. It's not a deception. It's like painting a picture and then saying that image is a false image. No image is false. All images are there, and they're to be viewed and to be taken as what you believe them to be, and that's completely, you know, your role. You know, it doesn't anger me that people make money out of crop circles. I think it's a good thing, especially if the farmers manage to charge and get something back for the little bit of damage that's been done, and if people can find a way of passing it out to people, forms of media, then, you know, they should be paid for their services, because it does need to get out there after all. So yeah, I mean, it enables things to get out there, and information and images to get out there, and no, it's not a bad thing at all. No. Does it bother me what other people believe? I wouldn't say that the word was bother me. I care about what other people think about. I'd hate to think that I was having a negative effect on anybody or on their feelings. So in that way, yeah, I care, but I try not to get too het up about people taking it the wrong way, you know. But people don't, you know. Because sometimes some people take it as an offence that maybe you're deceiving them, or trying to fool them, or trying to humiliate them. But if people knew the motivations behind you doing it, I don't think they'd view you so harshly, you know. No, I don't crave publicity in any form. No, it's not where I'm coming from. It's not my bag, old man. I think the most important thing about what other circle makers bring is diversity, different viewpoints, which are very important. Otherwise, you become stagnant in your overall view. You need new blood and new. That's maybe not the right term, but you need new life every so often to keep it spasmodic, to keep it on the edge, you know, so keep it special and interesting. So I think it's vitally important that there's a wide range, hopefully, of different minds and of different mindsets and artists and groups of people out there interacting with this medium. Otherwise, you're going to end up with a very linear and very maybe sometimes stagnant, if you're not careful, art form. I think Circlemakers could be unconscious channelers. I can only really speak for myself in that I've had quite a few experiences where we diverted or gone away from the planned course, and it seems to have become relevant at a later date, the change in pattern or change in a pictogram or picture. It seems to have some sort of meaning that it wouldn't necessarily have had. So in that period when we weren't necessarily going with our plan, special things seem to happen that seem to be relevant later. But also sometimes you might do a drawing and then someone else will do that design before you've even had a chance to do it. So in there, I certainly think there's a lot of telepathy or even channeling. There may be some interaction at some level with this other consciousness. There does seem to be another consciousness interacting with both the Circlemakers and the believers at some level. Seems to kind of have a giggle with people, you know, have a little laugh with people. The coincidences are too often and too prevalent for it to be telepathy, because I'm not telepathic. I don't believe I'm telepathic, but things happen, you know, that shouldn't happen, but they do. So maybe on some level there is some truth in that, you know. I can certainly see the phenomenon growing from this point onwards. I can see it manifesting in different countries, different, and maybe in different formats as well, you know. But I can certainly see it spreading to different countries and involving a lot more people. It's got an enormous amount of scope to develop into many different art forms. Art and form and geometry are basically infinite, as is the universe. So in that way, I can certainly see it going on, and I can see it spreading to other places and becoming maybe more prevalent, more prominent, and involving more people, which I can only see as being a positive thing. Well, there's been a couple occasions when we thought we were going to be caught, like lights scanning over the field, people out to try and catch people, or cars stopping at the edge of the field, or hearing noises. But I think our kind of viewpoint on the whole thing is to we believe we have a sort of a field of protection around us. We ask for protection before we start, and I think it's good to hold on to that while you're making. And you usually find that, as with anything in life, if you sort of try and view it positively from the outset, you'll usually find that it manifests positively. You know, you smile at the world and the world smiles back, because you can spend all night cowering down below the corn, shivering and frightened because you think you're going to be caught. But I think the best thing is just to get your head down and get on with it, and have faith that you're doing the right thing and it'll all be okay, you know. Is that we do an invocation before we start. We ask for certain things. We ask for permission to be protected, helping being guided, you know, that everything goes smoothly, you know. And also we ask that hopefully people may benefit in some way, shape or form. You know, you can maybe be a bit more specific about that, about how you hope it might benefit people and how it might positively enhance people's lives. And lo and behold, a lot of the time after the event, it manifests forward, and sure enough, maybe if you've asked for healing, it's healed someone, or if you've asked for it to open people's eyes to a particular thing, maybe that's happened, you know. And there's been plenty of instances where what we've asked for is what we've got. But as with all forms of magic, I suppose you could say, you have to be careful what you ask for, because sometimes you get it. I think the fundamental difference between the way that we make crop circles and the way that other groups maybe approach the situation is we try and keep an air of respect for the temple that we're about to build, for the sacred space that we're just about to produce, and for hopefully the air and the magic that it'll hopefully bring into people's lives. And we do that by, we do invocations before we start. We say hello to the spirits, whoever may be important to us, or what energy we may be significant towards us. And there's an overwhelming respect, or air of respect, for the environment in which we're working in and what we're doing. At no point is it childish or foppishness or never tried to make it negative, you know. We were trying to keep it purely positive and open-minded while we're making it as well, because we believe that the energy that we have while we're making the circle carries on fundamentally to the people that then enter that same space. That's the fundamental difference between the way that we do it and the way I understand that other groups may approach it. This is very important to us. It involves our entire attitude about the way that we view life and the universe. It comes through, hopefully, in the way that we, not only the art form itself, but also in the way that we go about making the circle in a very reverent and shamanic, maybe, way. Well, I definitely believe there seems to be some other form of intelligence that seems to be interacting with circle makers and believers alike. You know, at some level, there's certainly reams of evidence of balls of light. The amount of people that have seen them, that I know, that I've met, that I've talked to, that I've heard talk, and the amount of film that's came out from people that I trust and know and like, you know. There definitely seems to be a presence of some description that seems to be pushing the crop circle phenomenon forward, more than just how the people are moving it and changing it. Without being too specific, I had one occasion where I was making a circle at night without anybody really knowing that I was out there. And during our invocation, I always like to ask for something before I make a circle, and on this particular occasion I thought I'd help the farmer out, hopefully, and I was far too general, and I said, can Great Spirit, can you make this place more fertile? And I conceived my daughter about 2-3 days later. So yeah, be careful what you ask for, because you might just get it. I have seen balls of light. I've seen them while I've been making crop circles, and also while I've just been staying out overnight in the area. There's something that's almost taken for granted by a lot of the people around here. Once you start spending time around here, you can't help but understand that they're here, you know, they're in the area, you know. I'd really like to find out where this consciousness comes from, whether it's external, maybe it's internal, maybe it's a bit of both, maybe the two are the same. But there's definitely something in the fact that these places are magic. Coincidences happen more in these areas. They're much more prevalent, much stronger, much more life-changing almost. Well, no, they are life-changing. They fundamentally change the way that people view things, and this seems more than just a coincidence. This is synchronous. This is greater. This is almost divine. And there seems to be a consciousness, a motivating consciousness behind this that seems to be driving things forward, driving us to some eventual conclusion. What that eventual conclusion is, I don't know. Maybe it's that everything is interconnected. Maybe that we're not separate entities. Maybe on some level we're all part of the same thing, you know. And well, what a wonderful message for a consciousness to put forward to us, you know. What greater message is there? Maybe it's the greatest lesson that we have to learn in this very troubled time.
I make circles because I'm an artist, and I regard circle making as part of my artwork. There's a tradition of circle making stretching back 20 years. I'm a part of that tradition. And there are certain things that making a crop circle demands, and that does involve quite a lot of work and planning and such like. So if people regard that as trouble, then I guess that's what it is. But to me, it's just part of the activity of being an artist and making art in maybe a slightly odd, peculiar way, I suppose. Well, making circles is not a joke. I mean, it is funny sometimes, but generally it's not a joke. I mean, I kind of regard making circles as actually quite a serious activity. I mean, it occupies a lot of my time, a lot of my thoughts, and I mean, I think the circles function in quite a profound way for a lot of people. Crop circle making is a kind of a selfless act in a way. When you make a circle, although you're the author of it, because it's important that the circles are not seen to have human authors, you lose control of it, and therefore people, I suppose, can do what they like with it. I mean, I actually think the photographers that take such stunning photographs of it deserve every penny they get from the photographs. And I'm also particularly pleased when farmers make money from charging people to enter the formation. I don't particularly crave publicity for myself, but I do want my work to be seen in a public context and interact in a public way with large numbers of people, and hopefully often in quite a profound way as well. I've never pulled the wool over anyone's eyes, actually, and I've got not really any interest in doing that. Making circles is really like any other aspect of my art making. There's nothing deceptive about it. I'm simply going out into a field and laying down a design. And I suppose with that design goes a question to people. What does this mean for you? Why is it there? And how is it there? People are free to answer those questions how they will. I'm really interested in what other people believe. And part of the reason for making circles, I suppose, is it is like some kind of curious amalgam of at once going out and making a circle and feeling that you've met some kind of challenge, some kind of technical challenge, and at the same time then watching how other people absorb your creations and interpret it and speculate, analyse it, whatever. So in that sense, what people believe is fundamental to the practice of making circles, but not in the sense of mocking the belief. In fact, you're actually interacting, engaging with the belief. There is a totally symbiotic relationship with the circle makers and the people that research them, the crop circle researchers, UFO researchers, whatever they like to call themselves. Actually, the risk of being caught and prosecuted is very low. The fields of southern England are numerous and very large, and it's almost impossible to be detected whilst you're making a circle. On one occasion I was lost for 2 hours in a field trying to find two other people in the field who I knew were there, but despite knowing they were there, it still took me over 2 hours to find them. Now imagine if you went into a field and you didn't really know whether there was anyone there. The chances of finding anyone are so remote, so the chances of being discovered are so remote, really. I'm not attacking a belief system, but I certainly am, certainly am interacting with it and engaging with it. I mean, I'm actually myself very attracted to unorthodox, I suppose what other people call unorthodox or alternative belief systems. And as an artist, it's part of my artwork is engaging in them in a variety of different ways. Crop circles is just one. So in that sense, it's important that it's not an orthodox belief system like this church or some other established orthodox belief system, whether it be overtly religious or otherwise. I mean, I don't think any circle maker could morally justify what they do in the fields. It's not possible. Obviously, it's criminal, and in that respect, it's hard to take any moral position against it, and I don't seek to do that. But I do hope that what I do brings some kind of experience to people who visit them that they think is worthwhile, and that they don't feel that visiting them has been a waste of time, and they've got some kind of pleasure from it, some sort of enjoyment from it, or maybe something even more profound than that. My activities, sometimes do cause me trouble from believers. I think really because there's a climate of misunderstanding between circle makers and researchers. Circle makers are generally rather caricatured in the minds of researchers, and as a consequence there's a certain amount of vitriol directed against circle makers, not just myself, other circle makers as well. As I say, I think it's really a result of misunderstanding. I've had a couple of phone calls and some letters. I wouldn't call them a campaign of hatred or paranoia in any sense. I think that they are just cases of misunderstanding. But there is a curious paradox where Circles researchers love the creations that we artists make, but on the other hand hate the idea that they're made by artists and not by some sort of paranormal entity. So as a consequence, they're stuck somewhere in between those two things. Yeah, the first time actually, one of the first times that I visited a circle, I actually took a photograph, which I suppose what would be called a photographic anomaly appeared on. And shortly after that time, I started making circles. And that very day when I went out and took that photograph was a kind of weird conversion for me, because it was also the first day when I really twigged that circles probably were made by people. But at the same time, I experienced something which seemed genuinely, and still seems genuinely, anomalous. And that's really set the tone for my circle making activities since then, and which was in 1991. Since that time, I've had probably half a dozen sightings. Some of them have been photographic. Mostly they've not been. Mostly they've been whilst I've been constructing a circle. And as a consequence of that, they've been witnessed by a number of people, including on 2 occasions journalists. And these are mainly flashes of light, a ball of light and a column of light as well, recently, that we were witnessed. And they've inspired me to go on and do other things as well. So I've also made another series of artworks based on those experiences. Absolutely, bizarre coincidences happen all of the time. I can remember my early circle making days in the early 90s when I made a formation, and overnight another circle was added to it, which was actually on the diagram that I had with me, but we'd decided not to put that circle on the formation. I came back the next morning and the circle was there. I didn't know what to make of that at the time. And I guess I still don't really. Well, it's clearly not a new art form, because Doug Bauer has been making circles for 20 years. And in my opinion, actually, he has done something absolutely remarkable and kind of deserves the credit, which I'm sure he'll never get for it, unfortunately. But in addition to that, I think that there is a tradition in the paranormal of intervention, creative intervention by individuals that probably stretches back for centuries. I think you can see that in many, many different forms, from UFO photographs to perhaps going right back even to the Turin Shroud, to seances and spiritualists in the 19th century. There is a tradition of some form of sort of creative intervention which verges on deception sometimes, and crop circles are just another manifestation of the same thing, I think. Making a formation, can be very, very exciting, I suppose. I mean, certainly you get a kind of adrenaline hit from it, but the adrenaline hit is I think due to being in a very, very extreme situation, which also is quite alien in many ways. Your pupils dilate massively, so your whole experience, visual experience, and your senses, your visual senses, are completely thrown. It's almost like seeing in kind of infrared or negative or something. It's impossible to judge distances. Shadows appear where they shouldn't be. Things move on the corner of your eyes. Your eyes play all kinds of tricks with you. And then at the same time, you've got this technical challenge of putting something in a field in an incredibly short amount of time that is really pushing what's humanly possible to do. Added to which, you're trying your damnedest not to be caught in any way. So yeah, it can be pretty exciting, pretty hairy. I've no idea actually what crop circles are for. I make them because I'm an artist, and I see them functioning as art pieces in a very public way. I think other people think that they may be other things and for other things. So beyond that, I can't really say. Well, there's a number of things in the design of the circle that are interesting, and I think characterise formations, or the recent formations anyway, of the last few years, that they contain often, we design them so they contain very specific geometric relationships, which are usually related to the division of a circle by 2, 3, 4, 5 or 6 parts. And as a result of that, the geometric ratios they contain develop into geometric patterns from those basic divisions. And the other thing as well about the designs is that they often, we often try and make them so that they somehow resonate with images that are found in nature, or images that are found at least in notions about nature. So, I mean, that would include things like spirals or other geometric shapes that you might find in a natural setting. Yeah, I mean, the sources for some of the designs for circles are nature itself. Many of the circles of the last few years, nature, sometimes on a microscopic level, but often on a macro level as well, have provided the inspiration for the symbolism of the circles, as well as various geometric relationships that are embodied in those natural symbols.
We started crop circles, that's my other partner and I, pretty much when the season was drawing to a close. And I remember being in the Milk Hill masterpiece, that wonderful Frank tour. And I met Colin Andrews and stuff, we had a chat. And there was this absolute knowing with certainty then that there was a man-made phenomenon by and large. But when I discovered with certainty it was a man-made phenomenon, then the next step was to go out and make them. And it seemed the most appropriate thing to do. I think we just had a big stick at the time, just a big pole, and we just put down lots of wheat, and we just put down a nice big circle. Well, I say it was big for us then, but it was only about 80 foot across. And the next night we came to the field, and we just put circles everywhere in the field, all over the place. We probably put, well, I say everywhere, we probably put about 24 circles all in that field. Just circles with rings and just little things and grape shot and stuff like that. And we came back, and that was our first experience really of making crop circles. If you ask us for what reason did we go into the field to make crop circles, and to be entirely honest, I think initially because there's a bit of a buzz. Right, now people might think, this guy is a sad guy, why would he go into the field late at night to make crop circle for a buzz? But I think we wanted to see whether we could make them and whether people would see them as the authentic article. And then we felt over time that quite possibly something else was involved. And what that something else is, we don't really know, but we'll say that there's something, there seems to be some kind of intelligent response to what we're doing and some intelligent interaction. And that's what has really interested us. And probably is taking it to a point now that if we were to make crop circles again, which we don't know if we're going to do or not, it would mean that we'll be doing it for, one, because we want to make better crop circles, bigger crop circles, more elaborate, and two, because we think there's something else is happening, and I think it's something. So even the man-made formations, they seem to carry something with them sometimes. Not always, but sometimes there's something spiritual, I think, happening there. When I was 16, I remember very clearly, it's indelibly printed on my mind. We were staying at my Auntie Molly's in Reading, and I was there with my various cousins, and this was late at night, and we were in bed. And I remember very clearly we had this most incredible experiences started to occur, and we had balls of light, spheres of light, orbs of light, not beams of light from a torch. but orbs of light, very clearly orbs of light, coming up to the bedroom window, illuminating the whole bedroom, and then appearing to go over the roof of the house. Now, at the time, my Auntie Molly was so upset that she went outside to get her cat in because she was afraid for the safety of her cat. And I remember one of my cousins was really, really excited. He was jumping up and down, making all this noise and going up and down the stairs. And it got to a point where we just couldn't sleep, and the kids were playing up. And my Auntie Molly threatened that if he carried on, there'd be hell to pay when his dad came back. So I remember all that very clearly. And also remember the next morning at breakfast, my auntie had phoned the Ministry of Defence to find out if anything peculiar had been happening that night over that way. So all these incidences were indelibly imprinted on my mind. Yet, when I asked my auntie about this a few years back, she has no recollection of the experience. Now this is a bit disturbing, and I'm thinking, hang on a minute, but I have an absolutely clear recollection of the experience, and all these kind of arbitrary details and very mundane details as well accompanied it. So we had early experiences like that. Well, I became really interested in UFOs, and I can remember another occasion I was in London, and my mother said she opened the door of my bedroom and she witnessed a ball of light coming out of the bedroom and shooting off through the window, the landing window. Another occasion, she woke in bed and she saw two very tall beings at the foot of the bed standing, and they had some apparatus over their heads. She described it like that. Another occasion, she said she saw a star outside, what appeared to be a star outside the house. She watched it for 40 minutes, and it was going up and down and left and right, making the sign of the cross, as she described it. So, and we've had sort of experiences like that. And during circle making, we've also had experiences. Once we were in a field and we'd actually completed the formation. And so, because what people will say about circle makers seeing things whilst they're out there is that their eyes aren't accustomed to the night, and you do start seeing unusual things initially until your eyes become accustomed. But bear in mind that we'd actually made the circle. We'd been out for, it was only 2 or 3 hours, and we were coming back. The other member of our team then said something to me, and I turned round, and he looked really, really afraid. And he said he saw 2 very tall figures following us out of the field. He's very big, he's very strong, he does weight training, and he was talking about very high figures. Now yesterday I said to you, I think he said 14 feet. Now when you describe 14 feet is up there, I mean that seems to be too high. But actually at the time, I do recall him saying something like that. We're talking just very, very tall. I mean, people tend to talk about ETs as these little things. But so this was obviously not that kind of experience. Now, in the same field, a year later, when we were making a formation, I was standing holding the pole, my brother was scribing a circle, and there were these bright flashes, really intensely bright flashes of light, but gentle. I say intense, but when I'm thinking back on it, when you see these kind of UFO films of someone being abducted, they seem to have this really intense flare and they're sort of blinded and it hurts their eyes. I'm not talking about this. It was the whole field lit up, but there was when I think back, there's a gentleness to it. And also, when I think back, I feel certain that we felt energized. Or I know I felt energized with each flash of that light. It was as if something was energizing the circle. And what happened after that was really bizarre. My partner became incredibly confused. And he just seemed to have lost all perspective. And he just became almost kind of zombified. And it was a very unusual, and I became very concerned for him initially because it was just like he was in a trance. Now, he does remember that, but significantly or interestingly enough, he doesn't remember the flashes of light. And I know, so I'm talking about the whole field lighting up. I'm talking about obviously intense flashes of light. And so I find it, again, this kind of strange feeling of isolation. Well, hang on a minute. So I can remember this, but you don't. He can remember some of it. And so it's a kind of strange, it's a strange phenomenon. One I can't really explain, actually. There's a very real possibility that Circlemakers might be responding to a call of sorts, or an invitation from the unknown to go out into the fields and to create crop circles. It's something that I believe I've experienced. And I can remember lying on bed at home, coming home late one night after work and exhausted, lying on the bed with the window open during a lovely summer evening. And there was just a magical feeling. And it felt like it was coming through the windows, and the scent of the air, whatever. And it was like a call of the wild, just to go back, to go out into nature. And then for me, it was a call to make crop circles. And that night, I just contacted my partner, and we went out and made a formation. I can also say that there is a feeling about that place, how other people feel. A very dear friend of mine, I invited her to come to the circle that we'd made, and she passed the field, but she was afraid to go into the field. Even though she knew we made the formation, she felt there was a very eerie feeling to that particular field. And the biggest formation we made there was about 600 foot across, and it was very simple. But whilst we were making it, I was standing in the middle of the field holding the pole, and my partner was scribing the circle. And I saw very clearly people come into the field with dogs and with torches, and going like this with the torches very clearly, I mean really clearly. And I thought, oh no, we've been caught. And there's a feeling of dread. But something else came over me, and it seemed to say, no, stand your ground, carry on. And I looked, and these things had gone. During part of the creation of that formation, we both experienced a surge of energy when we made a part of that formation. We both agreed on it. We didn't know then, but we've since discovered that there is the remains of an old stone circle in the air. And I find this quite interesting, and I think there seems to be, I believe, I've got no proof, but it seems to be that we were guided to that area, interacting with something in that area. It's very alive and very vibrant, and I don't know what it is. I think I've always had interest in mystical things, but the most dramatic of all experiences I had was with the experience with I believe, with Christ. So I became a Christian about 2 years ago, and I've made circles since being a Christian on one occasion, and it was a very strange night, actually. That was the night we saw flashes, and also I cut myself very badly, and but we ended up making a formation and praising the Lord, actually, whilst making the formation. This sounds incredibly irresponsible, and I'm not sure about it. And as a Christian, I also love the earth. I have a deep love of nature, and I think the two can come together, in nature, worshipping in nature, as it were. And so, as a Christian actually making crop circles, I'm not sure about that. I mean, I did actually pray over it. It sounds bizarre, but I actually prayed over it. I think I'm never sure about actually going out to make crop circles. I'm never sure about it, and it's an area I'm not comfortable with. If I was really comfortable with it, I'd be happy to show my face and whatever. It's a strange area. It's almost like being involved in some occult practice. Now, as a Christian, you're not supposed to be involved in the occult, etc., etc. And what I mean by occult, there's just a huge area here which we don't understand. And we know we're interacting with something. We don't know how much we're being used or manipulated by this something. Whether this something is entirely benign, I don't know. I can only say that I used to have experiences with, I believe, what were possibly extraterrestrial intelligences. And since becoming a Christian, I no longer have those experiences. But the experiences that I have had have been certainly more benign. I was in one of my formations when the farmer came along, and he wasn't very happy, and that made me a little bit concerned. Obviously, kind of thinking, hang on a minute, this guy isn't happy about this. But certainly some of the major researchers have been in our formation, and have got a real buzz out of it. Yeah, I took a friend of mine in, and he didn't know it was my creation, and he was practicing Tai Chi in it, and he was balancing on one leg, and he's normally quite clumsy, but all of a sudden he was really inspired, and he seemed to be doing amazing Tai Chi, and I said to him, how do you feel? And he said, just such deep peace. And he was still very quiet, and he had a very positive experience in that formation. It obviously meant something to him. Well, I can remember once we were out at Barbary Castle, and this was in the evening, and it was a pitch black night, and it was the most glorious night. And we were there when it was light as well, but there was the feeling in the air like a door had been opened. And it was a door of it was an open invitation. It sounds bizarre, but we felt, and we joked about it, we said, you can make a formation in the complete daylight here, and no, you wouldn't get caught. And there was that sensation of protection and invitation that it was now okay to go out and make a crop circle. Now we didn't, but as it happened, that night, the East Field, 2 huge formations occurred, very significant formations occurred in the East Field. There may have been another one that occurred that night also, I can't recall now. But that was certainly one of those nights. Other nights we felt, again, we felt that definite call, that definite invitation, and great formation has appeared. We were going to, one year, do a formation locally, and we were umming and ahhing where to go to this particular hill, and we weren't sure about it, but all of a sudden we got the feeling in us, from our hearts, that it was okay. And I remember sitting in the room and feeling incredibly happy. As it happened, we didn't go that night, but someone else went that night, or something else, because the next morning there was a formation right on the place that we were going to actually use. And actually, to be honest with you, I was really fed up, because we were going to want to do something bigger, and but it was a really nice formation, and some people really loved that formation and got a really good feeling from it. But obviously it seemed that someone else picked up on that calling, or whatever it was, that impulse to do it, and someone else did it, and probably did a better job than we would have done, probably. Well, there were some really nice researchers out there. There's Colin Andrews. I get on well with Colin, and I believe Colin is a genuine researcher, and he's got to a point where he's done genuine research, and he's hated for it, because also Peter Sorensen. Peter Sorensen is a very genuine researcher, absolutely genuine, first rate, first class. He's done real undercover work, real detective work, and he's met human circle makers who claim to make crop circles. He's got to know them. He's also, legally, as you know, he's gone out with them to actually be a part of that now, and he's spoken about that recently. So Peter's a very genuine researcher. Colin, I would say, is a very genuine researcher. He also has spent considerable time talking to human beings and discovering, hey, look, yeah, human beings are making this, and I think that's fantastic on his part. But there are some researchers out there who, it's almost like a little cult. It's almost becoming cultic, and they have talks to people who are interested in the paranormal activity, and who believe that circles are done by an unseen force, created by an unseen force. And these researchers seem to bend the truth for their ears. And I can remember being at one meeting, one particular lady, a couple of times in fact, and I've actually been appalled by the kind of arrogance I felt in that room, by ordinary folk who believe they know something that they don't actually know. And also the way that certain major important things that happened that season, i.e. human circle makers legally making formations, were not even mentioned, and their work wasn't shown for people to compare for themselves, because I've seen formations like people like Matthew Williams has made. He did one in the Eastfield this year, a planetary formation, which was so superb. It's like, I thought everyone would be astonished. But I didn't hear that astonishment with researchers. They say, oh no, it's not like the original, it wasn't spherical. And I think, hang on, there's something missing there. There's one, at least must acknowledge this is a really good piece of artwork and whatever. And so I think that is definitely missing. There's a blind area, and there's a real arrogance there, because it's saying that it must be extraterrestrials because human beings can possibly do that. But what human beings can do is quite amazing. And I actually now believe that this attitude is actually more cynical than people who just believe it's human beings doing it, because it seems to say, no, you can't possibly do this. Now they don't, perhaps they have never tried, or perhaps they just can't confess that it's possible, because perhaps they're making, I don't know, they might be making money out of it. And I know some of them are making money out of it. I know some circle makers who aren't making any money out of it. But I know some researchers who are making plenty of money out of it. I think money is neutral. I'm very happy for everyone to make money out of it. For circle makers, I'd like everyone to make money out of it, including the farmers. Then everyone's happy. And at the end of the day, that's what really counts for me. Because it's just a wonderful experience to go out into a circle. And you find that when you go out and meet people in circles, there's a camaraderie. And that only vanishes when we're at talks and people are talking it, being experts and being, in a sense, condescending, or using it as a platform to broadcast their own particular philosophy. And many people are doing this to become like gurus. And they don't actually, like gurus, they don't actually know anything, but profess to know. And that is a bit of a corruption of the art of circle making, of the circles phenomenon, I think, in a sense. The Word of God, right, through prophets. The prophet is a human being, flesh and bone, and God is speaking through that flesh and bone, through a spiritualist, flesh and bone, and possible messages from the beyond. So there needs to be that physical presence. With Jesus, he was physically present to transmit this energy, to conduct this experiment or whatever it was, or to be a part of this great sacrifice. So there seems to be a necessity, a physical necessity, and so human beings are perhaps channels or conduits. So there's this lie of specialness, isn't it? You know, the circle makers might feel special because they're making the formations. The researchers might feel special because they're discovering the formations. But really, perhaps no one is special. We're just part of a movement, perhaps.
It's given me the opportunity to interact with and experience something I can only describe as being supernatural or paranormal, which at the best of times is very exciting and exhilarating. Perhaps at the worst of times is quite unnerving and even frightening. There's a certain artistic pride which comes into it, which I'll admit I enjoy when someone praises my work or work I've been involved with. But I don't really see it functions particularly well inside the art arena, which has a problematic relationship with the public and works far better outside the art arena when people know that what they're looking at is a crop circle and not something that's hung in a gallery. I don't really see it as that much trouble. It is very addictive doing it, especially if you're experiencing things which are beyond conventional science or science as we know it. If the believers want to believe whatever their beliefs may be, I'm quite happy to let them believe that, and I'm not going to come out and say that I've made this particular formation. It's not in my interests to claim authorship. I let people freely believe what they want to. It doesn't so much anger me unless the product which they're selling is of a very poor quality. I'm quite happy to go out and buy their products if they're of an adept standard. I don't crave publicity, but I think it's an integral part of the crop circle phenomena. Not perhaps the publicity of the people behind it, but the publicity of the circles themselves is very important. Well, I don't feel that I'm pulling the wool over anyone's eyes, because I'm allowing them to have a free decision about their belief. They can go out into a field and experience something which is very personal to them, something which perhaps only they can experience in that particular circle and will be very special to them. It's not in my interest to say, I made that circle, it didn't happen, because quite obviously to them it did. And very often something strange will have occurred whilst creating the circle. People are quite free to believe what they want to, as long as they don't impose their own beliefs upon me and allow me to base my opinion and beliefs on what I've experienced. We're not going to get caught or prosecuted. It's a near enough impossible task, unless you're going to mount 24-hour surveillance on every field in the south of England for the period that the crops grow, which simply isn't feasible. I'm not directly involved in any kind of religion, so saying to people who believe in Christianity that there simply isn't a God or Jesus never existed isn't really in my particular interest. I mean, I'm involved in circles, not in Christianity, and circles aren't strictly a religion, however much the believers might like to think it is. Exactly the same amount of right as anyone who researches the circles has to market a product which ultimately is on the backbone of something I've made, and exactly the same amount of right as a farmer has to charge £2 entry fee into his field. They kind of need us, we need them. Without the publicists of our product, it makes it, well, renders it 50% useless, really. It's something which needs to interact with the media, with the public, and without that, it goes unseen. It's just for me to know about and people I've made the circle with. No believers really know that I play quite as big a part as I do in circle making. Until now, perhaps. Absolutely, it's one of the main reasons why I make circles. It's perhaps not every circle that you go out and make has some kind of paranormal experience, but at least one every year for the last 5 years, ranging from maybe a huge ball of light with a very low, almost inaudible humming noise with it that appears to cast no light whatsoever, or a column of light shooting out from the sky, accompanied by a kind of metallic smell, like you've held coins in your hand, or small balls of light doing seemingly impossible things, as well as perhaps events which occur afterwards, like camera battery drains on your return, that perhaps a circle which I thought I'd made up appears somewhere else particularly relevant. For instance, on some secret document somewhere or something like that. If I've made a circle and I think that I've purely and simply come up with that design from my own consciousness, that maybe someone else has drawn out that sign or symbol, or had some direct relevance to that and experienced that symbol somewhere else. It seems now that there's been quite a huge shift in perception from the believers, that whilst formerly they were quite happy to believe that the circles were made by some supernatural force, that now they're more than happy to believe that the circles can be made by humans, but it doesn't matter. The shapes that are appearing in the fields are giving inspiration and allowing for people to enjoy perhaps the countryside and the phenomena. Whereas beforehand, if you mention the word hoax, you'd get a scornful look and perhaps be targeted for some aggressive behaviour. That doesn't really seem to be too much of a priority now. No, because in many ways I don't think that the whole phenomena is defunct. As I've said, there's many kind of instances of something paranormal happening, which, when it makes you feel quite unnerved because you don't know precisely what role you play in the whole phenomena, it can be a little confusing at times. I guess I'm fairly confused as to what role I play. I'd like to think that there was something bigger and greater out there, as I think perhaps everyone would. I think the whole thing resides in land art. Ultimately has an authorship behind it. When crop circles have no authorship behind them, they're a lot more powerful. They are crop circles, not art, which I find particularly interesting. If they become art or land art, they lose a lot of their mystique, their paranormal powers. People are less likely to believe in something happening, and I think that's very important, that if you're wanting to experience something, you have to go into it with an open mind and not a closed mind. People will come, and I wouldn't use perhaps as strong a word as worship, but they'll bring a whole manner of beliefs, be it dowsing or meditation, or just simply wanting to experience a particular change in atmosphere or energy. And that is, I think, perhaps one of the bigger successes of crop circles, that they can bring together a lot of people who want to experience these things, and a lot of enjoyment when people do experience these things, be it that it's not collectively or cannot be proven, is perhaps a facet of the whole phenomena which is very integral to it. Well, I would consider myself an architect of temporary sacred sites, depending on what people experience when they're in that temporary temple. If, however, they do experience something, then I'm very happy for them that they have experienced something, and it could be seen then as a temporary sacred site.